Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma231 here, back in Data, Weekly Shonen Jump, issue number 30 of 2025. And wow, we finally have more series to talk about in Jump. Of course, we are right in the smack middle of this batch currently of 4 more series entering Jump, and of course, with that, we have 4 more series leaving Jump at the same time. Of course, this week we have lost the series of Embers, a good old soccer manga that honestly, I have really enjoyed, and it's one of those, I actually think I'm going to try to pick up the volumes from Japan, because while it wasn't like one of those bigger cancellations, like, oh yeah, you guys got rid of Tenmaku Cinema, Ayashimon, these series that I like really loved from Chapter 1, and I thought only were really getting better, and had a lot more potential to live. Embers was one of those where in the middle you could tell it was getting canceled, but for the fact that we all saw it coming, the mangas never let up at all. I mean, I don't even know what the mangas' names are. We'll get there whenever we talk about the 20th chapter of the series. What is that? Is that halfway through this video? I actually think it is. Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah, about halfway through the video, we'll be talking about that chapter, the final chapter of Embers. But with that, of course, we have a brand new series starting with, of course, it's called Kagami. It's a little bit of an interesting series. I probably won't be going into full depth about all of it here in this video, but we're still going to be talking about it a little bit. And of course, Kagami has the magazine cover this week and the lead color page and all of that other various stuff. So if you were wondering who got the magazine cover when the new series entered Jump, well, I'll give you one big guess right there, right? But yeah, a little bit of an interesting thing, of course, we now have 15 series back in the magazine to talk about this week. Of course, it's one of those weird things where One Piece has been off a few of these weeks, Kagurabachi took a week off for all of that, so like, all of these series, while some have been ending and new ones have been joining, other ones have sort of been dropping out like, hey, we need a break this week. But honestly, next week, I don't think we are having a break for anything, and One Piece is on, and Ruri Dragon should be coming back decently soon. I feel it was the beginning of July, so probably not next issue, because that should come out on the 29th of June, if I'm not mistaken, but we'll see there at the end of the day. But yeah, really, I don't want to just, like, sit here and ramble about all of the prelude to this anymore. I sort of want to talk about all 15 of these excellent manga chapters we got this week, but I'm going to say excellent, because I liked almost nearly every single one of them. Sometimes you have a few stinkers, but as we'll be getting to, Elusive Samurai focuses on my favorite character. Kill Blue was just awesome, so we'll be talking about all of that in due time. But if you guys don't know how the series works, it's actually pretty simple. So I'm just going to be going through, rambling about all 15 of the series that I read in Weekly Shonen Jump this week, and then we're pretty much going to be putting them offside. At the very end of the video, we're going to be ranking them from what I thought was the best series of the week, all the way down to what I thought the worst series of the week was, and all of the other 13 spots in between. Because yes, we have 15 series to talk about, and honestly, let's just go ahead and hop into it right now. Of course, the first chapter we're going to be talking about is Kagurabachi chapter number 83. So, of course, I do a video series on this channel where I talk about Kagurabachi chapters for way too long. It's sort of like one of the main things I do, besides for talking about Jump and a few other manga. It's like, hey, I'm a Kagurabachi guy. And this chapter was really the chapter where we learned about Inten's true realm and what the ability of that sword truly is. Really, we are learning what Chihiro's Bankai is. I know I made that joke in the video, but it just doesn't stop being funny to me, pretty much, right? But pretty much in this chapter, we see that, like, Samura is just completely overwhelming Chihiro. Of course, he's teleporting around using Crow. He's using all of his other abilities too, just, like, moving around, ducking around. And Chihiro's not really being able to keep up with Samura. It's, like, really all he can do to, like, ward him off and, like, barely dodge out of the way. And eventually, as Chihiro looks like he's getting ready to get better, Samura pretty much overpowers him and, like, kicks him off the roof of a building, sinking him into a body of water. And whenever Chihiro falls in here, it almost seems like Chihiro is sinking down to the ground as he, like, falls deep into this pool. And we see on the other side, he sort of, like, falls through the water into, like, a portal or something like that. And we see that he ends up in the Rokuhira Swordsmith, where we see, of course, his father is, like, going through forging a blade and all of that. We see Chihiro's doing it, and this is also where we learn that Chihiro helped forge Inten. That's a pretty cool moment, like, legitimately, what can I say? And eventually comes the whole idea of that Rokuhira imbued all of the enchanted blades with an ability, right? For instance, the ability of the first 6 were to be tools of war meant to, like, destroy the incoming army from the people of Shokoku and win the war for Japan at the end of the day, right? Blades meant for destruction, right? And the whole idea is that, oh no, Chihiro, your blade, the Inten that you helped forge, you were that guiding light illuminating the path the Inten forward for your father. Your blade is the one that has the ability to break the other enchanted blades. And the way that Chihiro really views this is that with the Inten, he is going to destroy the Shinuji. Of course, you get rid of all of the eternal contracts and all of that, or are they called the eternal contracts? Yes, they are, because, like, yeah, they're eternal, like, you can't break them, that's the whole idea. But if he can destroy that, destroy the core in the middle, then he can maybe free all of the other sword bearers at the end of the day. So, just a really awesome chapter of Kagurabachi going through. I know I left a lot of stuff out for my, like, little brief overview of the chapter, but if you want to see my fuller thoughts on this, or is, like I said, a full-length video over on my channel, and go check it out. It gets, like, 23 or so minutes, and honestly, a really good conversation about this great chapter of Kagurabachi that really recontextualizes a lot of the series. I mean, it does, but it also doesn't, and yeah, it's just a good chapter of Kagurabachi, you guys know what I'm saying? Well, One Piece chapter 1152, I'm never going to get over how big that number is. This chapter is really all about getting us into a series of flashbacks, pretty much, right? As we sort of start off this chapter, as we see that Loki's like, alright guys, Harjin, you're going up to help all of the battle and stuff up there. Take me with you, pretty much, right? And we see that Harjin's like, no, like, you're going to fight for Elbaf, like, none of us can ever let you do that, like, I'm not taking you anywhere. Eventually, Luffy has a whole idea of, well, hey, join my crew then, Loki, like, yeah, we can set him free, and, like, we can show Harjin all of the stuff going on, and we can win the battle at the end of the day, pretty much, right? And also, in this moment, we get Mr. Ya pretty much saying that Sanji may have something to do with Conqueror's Haki, along with pretty much letting Zoro know that Zoro also has Conqueror's Haki. I mean, we've known this since, what, like, the beginning, or, no, I'm pretty sure it was the beginning of the raid on Onigashima in the anime, because I think I remember seeing a Techie 101 video on that, but, then also looking over at it, I think it was during the fight with King is where he really showed it off, if I'm not mistaken, but honestly, I need to reread all of that arc. I almost have all of the omnibuses for the Wano arc, so almost I see sit down and just, like, flip through all of them in physical paper form, you know what I'm saying? But the whole idea here is, eventually, Mr. Yod just says, like, hey, Harjin, go over and unlock Loki's chains. And all of the giant pirates are like, no, we can't do that, like, what are you talking about? But yet Mr. Ya pretty much explains, like, hey, that day whenever Loki supposedly went through and killed your father, we didn't see the whole thing, but me and Shanks were actually together, but we felt an abnormal haki from the castle, and we didn't particularly see the whole thing. As pretty much it's the whole idea of Harjin says, alright Loki, if you have a story to tell it to us now, and you have, like, 15 minutes to tell it to us. Like, don't tell it to us for long. He says, you have 3 minutes to explain everything, pretty much. Like, what happened in the castle 14 years ago, Loki? Like, explain it to all of us, right? And the whole idea is we cut to 14 years ago, as we see that Loki was pretty much entering the castle and going through to pretty much see what was going on and, like, walking through his, oh no, all of a sudden, he's walking into the castle, him and Beard Hill Jarol are sort of going through, and oh no, it seems like the King Harald was stabbed through by a bunch of people, pretty much. Oh no, and we see that Loki wasn't a part of this whatsoever. I mean, it may seem that he went through to mercy kill his father or something, but we're not 100% sure, right? But we also see while all of this is happening, we cut over to the Sun World where we see Scopper Gaban's house, and we see that both Gaban and Shanks are there, and we see that they're just sitting there in a hot tub hanging out with each other, right? And we even see that Ripley's sort of there looking through the window at the two of them, right? And I really just love the moment where we just see both Shanks and Mr. Goss sitting down and talking to each other, because it's honestly a really interesting conversation. And like, yeah, it's been a good while since we shared a bath together, and it's like, what are you kidding? It's not been like 3 or 4 years, it's been like 10 years ago, that's when the captain died, right? And the whole idea of Shanks being like, yeah, well, my life's changed a whole lot, and I intended to, like, I was planning to join up with Buggy, and go back to a pirating life, but even here in Elbaf, there's so much more to learn. And Mr. Ya even calls Shanks a child of fate, so probably the initial D is in there somewhere, as it's just the whole idea of these two hanging out, talking with each other, and eventually we see that, Shanks wants to go talk with King Harald about something, right? As we see that Mr. Goss says they worship him like a god here in Elbaf, right? And Shanks said that he met him in Sacred Mary Joa a good little while ago, and there's something that he wanted to talk to him about, but he couldn't talk to him about there in Mary Joa. So he'd like to come here and discuss it, right? And of course, this was the same day where that hockey emanated from the castle, and the king presumably died here in the moment, right? And we also see the sword going through Chief Jirul's head. Hey, look at that, right? But here on the final page, we sort of get this whole idea of like, hey, on this day there was a massacre in the castle, and the most beloved king in Elbaf's history, the wise King Harald, perished. But what was it that caused people to praise him so? For that, we must go back in time to 109 years before the present, when the question of what was the most frightening thing on the sea would elect a unanimous answer. The giant pirate crew were the most wieldy, feared figures of the day. At the same time, the royal ship from the land of giants only enhanced fear in the world that people felt towards Elbaf. And a major reason for that was that of King Harald, the king of Elbaf, who just ascended to the throne at 49 years old, just 15 years old in human years, and it was undoubtedly the low-life scumbag. And that's where we end this chapter, where we see King Harald with these two massive horns on his head, pretty much of like the old Oni giants, and we see that he's going through and just crushing houses, like crushing almost a palace here in this random kingdom, pretty much. It's like, yes, this is the king of Warland Elbaf, King Harald. And that's where we end this chapter of One Piece, and on one hand, it's like, man, this is really cool. I really love seeing the discussion between Mr. Yacht and Shanks in this chapter, and now we're finally learning everything about King Harald. Oh man, he was a really bad guy, it looks like, back in the day. And of course, seeing how he'll be redeemed and sort of how he's becoming the person he is, and also why it matters that he died and why Loki may have done it, pretty much, right? A lot of really interesting things we're getting here, and I did enjoy this chapter of One Piece. Definitely not my favorite chapter of the week, but a lot of intrigue, especially with seeing how we may be going into a longer flashback right about now, right? Well, as we're sort of starting a flashback, we are ending a whole arc in Ichi the Witch chapter number 39. This chapter is titled Feelings Returned, because of course the last thing that happened was Gokuraku took his fist and went through and absolutely punched the joyous sorrow magic Bakugami straight in the face, right? And we see that the aftermatch of this punch that Gokuraku does is pretty much his mechanical arm gets blown to pieces, right? As we see that Bakugami like hits the ground of a building really hard and like just like pretty much shatters the pavement here in the moment, right? And we also see the wheel on Gokuraku's back start to break here in the moment. So the sadness is leaving him after he endured it for so long, right? And both Richiya and Ichi go over to pretty much help Gokuraku here in the moment, like, hey, everything's going to be okay, man, right? But as this happens, we see that also the soul chain that was connecting both Gokuraku and Ichi's arms together has pretty much broken here in the moment. And the Joyous Sorrow magic, his body's like exploding into all the magic getting ready and forming the acquisition gem pretty much, right? So Ichi pretty much leaves Richiya to tend to Gokuraku and walks over to Joyous Sorrow magic. And the Joyous Sorrow magic isn't really liking this whatsoever. It's like, no, stop, like, you can't, not to me, I'm a magic fit, I'm supposed to stand beside the Lord Hater, like, you can't do this to me, like, please, wait, Lord World Hater, right? And Ichi pretty much walks over and starts grabbing the acquisition gem from him, and drops one of the coldest lines we've gotten in a while, as Ichi just says, like, hey, no one will ever hug you again. This hunt is Gokuraku's victory. Takes the magic gem as the Bakugami magic just disappears. And also, the tapier outer form of it also just starts to erupt into all of the memories and all of the sadness that these people had as it starts to flow back into all of these bodies. As we see that both Richiya, people like really the first person we met in this town, he was why can I not remember what titles are, like the head priest guy pretty much, he remembers his wife here in the moment, his wife and his child. We see that Richiya remembers, of course, her mother here in a moment, and all of the people of Bakugami all sit there and remember all of their loved ones, all of their sadness here in the moment. We see that Richiya's father, the king, realizes what he did to Gokuraku and all of this here in the moment, right? As we see that Richiya just starts to cry, and Gokuraku also starts to cry here in a moment, saying like, hey, elder sister, I'm so glad for you, like, I'm really, really glad. And two of them just, like, sit down and hug each other. And Ichi just stands back, seeing this moment of family in front of him, as we just see a singular tear running down his face here in a moment. And we see that Descross walks up and just places a hand on his shoulder, as we just get a little bit of narration saying, hey, on that day, after 10 long years, the people of Kagami came together as a country and cried. As we see the sun coming up on the brand new day, as we end this chapter of Ichi the Witch on this really beautiful moment of, hey, it's finally over. This magic is out of here, and the people of Kagami are able to cry once more. And honestly, it's just a really nice arc. I really enjoyed this arc, and I can't wait to see where we go next time. Really, really good chapter of Ichi the Witch. I mean, if we look the past few weeks, it's been Ichi the Witch first, second, third, and then where was it here? Did I even rank it? Oh yeah, it's in the middle pretty much. Then second, like, Ichi the Witch has been a standout series almost in its entirety of its run. Like, it's not going to stop here either. Ichi the Witch has just been amazing, and continues on being amazing pretty much, right? Well, next up is Kill Blue, chapter number 106, and this chapter is pretty much all about the whole idea of at the end of the day, Ogami ends up beating Subaru in the whole battle of the, oh gosh, what are these things called? Airsoft guns. I just woke up, so I'm like, I don't remember all the words here in a moment, but I'm remembering them as I speak pretty much, right? But we see that Ogami pretty much goes through, and the end of the day is him pretty much showing Subaru what is up, right? The beginning of the chapter is a little bit of that flashback of seeing whenever Subaru was a young child hanging out with Nadeshiko, and pretty much going through is like he tries to be his bully, he fails, he tries some more, he fails, and at the end of the day, he's able to overcome it, and this is just the moment when he learned, like, hey, there's something just completely addictive about going through and winning at something and pretty much showing that you are the best at it at the end of the day, and seeing all of that hard work paid off, of course, as we learned last time, right? And really, we just see the two of them fight going through here in a moment. We see that there's a moment where Norin comes up and ends up seeing these two fighting with each other, and really just properly sees Ogami in his true element, which is him with, like, a maniac smile on his face holding a gun at another person. Typical things that we all enjoy, right? And at one point, it looks like Subaru has the upper hand, but Ogami's able to pretty much, like, wiggle his way out of it by, like, dodging his head out in, like, the middle of a second. And of course, he just has more of that experience, and he's just like, hey, I'm going to win this round. By no means do I, like, think that I have beaten you here in the moment, President Subaru Ichijo. And Subaru's like, hey, I'm glad to hear it, but a loss for me is a loss, and I will get you back for it, Mr. Juzo Ogami. And that's where we end this chapter, with Ogami pretty much point-blank firing a BB off, and it hits the Student Council President here in the moment, right? But of course, we have the whole idea of, isn't there one more guy on the student council team, that Inori fellow? So, like, is he going to be a part of this, or who really knows, right? But it looks like Subaru has lost here in a moment. And this is just a really awesome battle. It took, like, 3 chapters to happen. And, yeah, I'm just really satisfied with how this little bit of an arc has seemingly wrapped up in Kill Blue. I really enjoyed it, right? Well, next up is Odor of the Flame, chapter number 7, and I can definitely say this is probably the weakest chapter of Odor of the Flame that we've had so far. As we pretty much see, like, okay, Etsuo, Piriko, and Order pretty much come through, use all of their powers, and beat all of these enemies here in the moment, right? We see that Etsuo Piriko goes through and uses all of her ice skates here in a moment, and eventually Order comes through, forms a sword of fire, pretty much using heroic vigor on his fingers so it won't burn him, goes through and cuts all of this guy's ice things. I'm pretty sure his name was, like, Adolf of the Ice Coffin or whatever his name was. But really, the only funniest thing about this chapter is just how this guy, their enemy, just calls all, like, his attack moves. He's like, oh yes, Ja Akaru, which translates to Ice Coffin. The next page, we see he's using Suri Ja Akaru, the Great Ice Coffin. One more page later, it's Ja Akaru Hakudata, the Coffin Ice Burial. And then here in, like, 2 more pages, he uses his final version, which is the Ja Akaru Pasanari Ice Coffin Armor. And it's like, okay, sure, I'll let you throw out all these attack names all at once pretty much, but sort of is what it is there. They end up winning today, and it seems like we get a discretion shot where this guy seems like he's clearly beaten. He's like, done? Me? Like, I'm not done yet. And then, presumably, they just go through to slit his throat or something like that, right? But the whole end of the chapter, the final 2 pages, are pretty much the whole idea of the townsfolk saying, like, hey, thank you guys for coming through and saving us. Like, you two are complete heroes, pretty much. And let's note that we end off this chapter of Order of the Flame on. This definitely wasn't the strongest chapter that we've gotten of this series so far, but I am very interested to see where we are going to be going from here, because there's a lot of places that we can go, and I feel like as a first battle, this was okay, but if we go into like a bit of a longer arc now and really see where this series can shine its strength, it'll be a whole lot better. So yeah, it was a fine chapter, but definitely not the best one we've gotten of Order of the Flame. Next up is the second chapter of Haru Kaze Mound, of course, our brand new baseball manga in Shonen Jump. And of course, we get a nice little color page for, of course, the second chapter of this series. And honestly, I do like it because not only do we have our main character, Nagiharu, pretty much standing here, going to a brand new high school, throwing up a baseball in his hand, but we see that he's standing in like a pool of water, and there's a reflection of course, his brother, Akoze, on the other side of it, looking back up at him. And of course, the only other named character we know so far, who is this guy, I think his name's Ibuki. I'm going to need to learn that soon, it seems like, but Ibuki, the short catcher guy, or whatever he is, pretty much, right? But pretty much, as this chapter goes on, we see the very beginning of this chapter is Nagiharu and Akazoe's conversation of like, hey, I'm not going to be going to that big Hojitsu school where we dreamed of going. I'm actually going to be teaming up with Ibuki and going over and doing this other thing, and I want to beat you someday, so let's become rivals, pretty much. And Akoze's like, hey, sounds good. We're pretty much going to be doing this, pretty much. We're going to be rivals from now on. So it's like, hey, Akoze and Nagiharu are going to be brotherly rivals on these two opposing baseball teams. Of course, this is where we all knew it was probably going to be going, and yes, it does seem like a little bit of a weird choice not to include it in the first chapter, but I also understand what they were trying to do in the first chapter too, so it's one of these hard things of like, yes, I am not a professional manga. I do not think I could sit down here and write a better series than this, of course, right? It's like, on one hand, I have read a lot of manga, I know a lot of tropes, but as far as coming up with something purely original, I write D&D, I steal a lot of ideas, right? And the placement does seem a little bit weird at the beginning of this chapter, but honestly, I'm fine with it. It makes sense, of course, going into the rest of this chapter, which is Nagiharu pretty much being like, hey, Ibuki, you're ready to be going through all of this. I've decided to pretty much team up with you and not my brother, pretty much, right? And then we just get a little bit of a training montage. It honestly reminds me of, like, My Hero second chapter, where it's like, oh yes, 9 months, finally just, like, move in an instant, pretty much, as we see that Ibuki's going through, timing Nagiharu's throws, the spring is coming, the, like, winter is past, pretty much, and all the idea is, like, hey, it is spring of the next year, they're in East Tokyo, Hinakazura Private High School, or Hina High, as we'll probably be calling it, because, like, yeah, Hinazakura High School. It works, but it's a little bit long, you know what I'm saying? Especially to somebody who Japanese is not a native language, and I still get tripped up on Japanese names, right? But pretty much we see that Ibuki and Nagiharu are going through and meet some of the other team members here in the moment, right? We see that one guy's name is Yuma Hodaka, and the other one is Maisuke Ushirabara. And we just see, like, yes, the two of them look like good friends and goofballs, pretty much, right? And I'll be interested to see what sort of their baseball power is. Like, oh yes, they're not good at something, they're just irregular at it, as of course the series seems to go. And we also meet another guy named Wakamori, if I'm not mistaken, right? But we see that he's just, like, cleaning his glasses on a bench, just as like, hey, Ibuki, I just don't understand that. Not bringing Alkaze makes no sense for us, and I assume you have, like, a convincing explanation, Hayama, pretty much, right? As we see that, like, Nagiharu's like, oh no, this isn't good, I don't like how this guy's just glaring at me and all of this, pretty much, right? As the whole idea is, like, yes, I brought this guy because I think he's better, and we see that Wakamori even calls Nagiharu, like, a discount Alkaze, and we see that Nagiharu's like, I mean, he's technically not wrong at the end of the day, right? But the whole idea is Ibuki saying, like, hey, do you think, like, I just brought this guy if I didn't have my reasons? Like, let's get up on the mound and let him do all this pitching at you, pretty much, right? The whole idea is, like, you'll hold the bat, he'll pitch, let's see if you can hit it here in the moment, right? As we just see all of this happen, there's a little bit of, like, a back and forth of, like, Nagiharu being like, yeah, I know I'm not as good as my brother, but I'm going to try it just as hard here in a moment. as we get a really awesome shot of him doing like his southpaw pitching style. The ball is almost scraping the ground here in the moment, right? And he's going through and throwing it here in the moment. As there's a whole idea of what is the strongest type of pitcher, right? And of course you may think like, oh, what if a fastball or like a nasty break on their ball, but like teams with really good batters can handle those. The worst whole idea is a pitcher that they have never seen before, right? The pitch that starts to hit is one that you can't expect where it's getting ready to go. Which on one hand, it's like, okay, if this was just like a party trick you brought it to a random new person, sure. But like, is Haru going to like continue to like evolve his pitching style beyond this? Because like the whole idea of like, okay, I get where you're going. Nobody's expecting it. But whenever you play like the same teams over and over again, somebody's going to get ready to expect it here in the moment. So it's like, I sort of get where it's going, but it's a little bit of a bad reasoning, but I still get what this series is going for, right? As we see the Nagiharu goes through, pretty much throws his arm back, and we see there's a bunch of feathers that almost sprout off of his arm here in a moment, as Nagiharu goes through and pitches the ball with incredible speed over towards Wakamori, this batter, and Wakamori can't hit it, and we see that Ibuki catches it behind him, and the whole idea is Nagiharu's like, okay, that was the only strike one, so I need to stay sharp. After all, the true test of my weapons is yet to come. And this is where we end this chapter of Harukaze Mound. I'm very interested in it. I will be interested to see where next chapter goes. And honestly, I probably think I'm going to continue to read this series because, like, hey, we just got rid of Embers. I at least want to be reading one sports series. So, yeah, I'll be decently interested to see where Harukaze Mound goes from here. Well, now we're finally into that moment where we're going to talk about the brand new series in Weekly Shonen Jump this week, Kairigami Chapter number 1. And the beginning of this chapter is, of course, the whole idea of what is the idea of this series. It seems to be sort of like one of those Exorcist type series with a race of people, or I don't know, like creatures called Shinugai or Shinguai, or however you're supposed to say that. It seems like there's like some Chinese inspiration here. I don't know if there's like, oh yes, it's Shinguai or like Shinugai. Like, I don't particularly know how the proper pronunciation of that is, but hopefully I will learn in good time. But like, if we're looking at Japanese, it's Shinguai. Yeah, like Shinguai or something like that. But either way, our main character of this series is a boy named Ko. And this is really funny because I remember there's a character named Ko in a series called Diamond of the Rough that ran in Jump Plus for a little while. And and that was a little bit of a series where he wore like a traditional like Chinese dress sort of thing. And like he had this shorter black hair and like a little bit of like a hair tuft, like braided piece coming out of the front. And this character named Ko looks very similar. It seems like he's a bit taller. And also, if I'm not mistaken, the Ko in Aragane no Ko or Diamond in the Rough, I'm pretty sure he was like very young, like 14 or something, while this guy seems to be a bit older, but and a little bit taller, as we see here in a moment. But it really is just funny. It's like, oh yes, these two characters named Ko, or I think his name was Kai or something, and Ko was like the main female lead in that series. Either way, similar looking characters, right? It's a whole idea I'm getting for here in the moment. Maybe I'm forgetting. Here's the thing, I own 2 of the Japanese volumes on my shelf, so I'm actually just going to go grab one of those off and just see the character profile real quick. Okay, yeah, I'm just a moron. Your main character's name is Kai, but I still stand. He's got the braid on the same side of the face. He's a little bit of a short guy wearing, like, the typical Chinese dress. Like, he's got that same hair. Like, if you guys don't know, look up Kai from Aragane no Ko, the manga, or Diamond in the Rough, as I think the English one was called, and you'll see how similar these two look. It's honestly really, really funny, right? But the whole idea is most of the people in this town think that Ko lives alone in the woods, pretty much, and we see that, like, while everybody thinks that's the case, it actually isn't. Like, he actually has a little bit of a family member, right? In the form of the Shinugai named Chiyo, pretty much, right? And the whole idea is these two have, like, a little bit of an interesting relationship. Like, in the past, Ko was, like, shivering on the ground. His parents were pretty much killed in a moment. And we see this Shinugai, Chiyo, pretty much come over and be like, oh, hey, like, what are you doing in a place like this? And we see the Ko's like, yeah, I'm just waiting for my dad to come back. He went to go buy some cigarettes or something, and he hasn't come back yet. And pretty much, right, eventually it's this whole idea of Chiyo being like, hey, so you're like the offspring of a human, then, like, look how tender you are here in the moment, right? It's like, hey, but do you not understand that you've been abandoned by your sire, pretty much? Like, how many days have you been waiting, right? As Chiyo pretty much says, like, hey, I'll become your family here in the moment, pretty much, right? As we see the two of them have spent time together, and it's pretty much been going back and forth over the years, and yeah, they've just gotten pretty close, all things considered, right? But this doesn't really stop Ko from wondering what is under Chiyo's mask, right? Of course, being that she wears, like, this pig demon mask pretty much the entirety of this first chapter. I say entirety because there's a whole crux of this series here in the moment, right? Well, eventually Ko goes back to the town, and we see that, like, there was a girl early in the chapter who's like, oh no, Shinugai are here, and, like, they're going to completely destroy and wreck everything. And Ko was pretty much just like, oh, okay, it's a little bit of an interesting thing, right? As he's going through, and, like, he gets this stew from one of the ladies in town, and just sees all the families interacting with each other. Until eventually, one of these girls just, like, comes in town, like, oh no, I saw it was a Shinugai in the woods, right? And it was like, oh no, the woods, and Ko's like, oh no, I need to go save Chiyo here in a moment. So he runs back to the house, and as he keeps running and running, we see that one of these Shinugai appears right behind Ko, right? And Ko's like, oh no, that's a Shinugai. Like, there's a bunch of human heads on it. Like, that's not good, pretty much, right? And as he's running around, he discovers Chiyo, right? And as we learn, Shinugai have this thing called a thrall. And it's pretty much somebody who they're raised up to pretty much possess, pretty much, and that's the whole idea that we get here, right? And we understand that it seems like, oh, I'm sorry, I forget her name. Chiyo raised up Ko as a thrall to begin with, but then he became, like, too important to her, where she wasn't willing to use him here in the moment, right? As it's the whole idea of, okay, you know who Chiyo is. They're the god Shinugai who lost its body and is now doomed to wander in misery, pretty much. The god of war itself. Okay, looks like we're getting some Chainsaw Man God of War stuff here in the moment, right? But, or just like the video game series God of War. I guess that was a more apt reference I could make on the manga channel, where I made the Chainsaw Man reference, a very obvious one. But we see this other Shinugai going through trying to attack here in a moment. And we see that Ko's a little bit affected by all of this here in a moment. And we see that he tries to help Chiyo run away, like throwing some water and pocket sand at this guy here in a moment, right? And as they're running away, we see that Ko's having this mental thing of like, okay, has Chiyo been using me all along? Was it her goal to really possess me? Like, what if I saw under her mask? Like, no, she definitely wouldn't do that, right? As pretty much we're running around, eventually it's like, hey, Chiyo, wait, like, what are you doing? And he's like, hey, I said stop, like, what that Shinugai said, that you were planning to possess me, pretty much, right? And we see that Ko goes through and starts to, like, touch her, but we see that her body seems to be almost, like, incorporeal, right? As we see that his hand just goes through. And Chiyo explains that, like, hey, she's nothing but a hollow and empty vessel, pretty much, like, hey, a long, long time ago, she was thoroughly defeated, and pretty much her enemy took everything. Her face, her entrails, her hands and legs that she needed to fight, and that she has been wandering alone in the darkness ever since, trying to get those things back. And eventually, she took Ko in, and in her current form, she couldn't really fight, so she would need the body of another, and she was planning to use Ko for pretty much that goal. But then, Kobe just came too much dear to her, pretty much, so the thought of stealing his body wasn't the big idea, right? As we see that Chiyo says, like, hey, Ko, this is where we part ways. I need to go and find a way to slay that creature, pretty much, right? And we see that Ko's like, hey, but, like, if that's true, then you can't fight. Like, why do you need to fight him, right? As we see that Chiyo explains, well, that's because one of the faces that that guy carries is one of mine, pretty much, right? He's like, hey, I'm surprised it's in here of all places. And the whole idea is like, okay, then. Ko's like, hey, I'll be really willing to take that guy down for you if I'll finally be able to see your face. And Ko's like, hey, well, you can go and, like, use my body. If you possess me, you'll be able to catch him off guard, right? And once we have your face back, we'll find the rest of your body, too. Like, go ahead and use my body as much as you need, pretty much. Like, hey, even if I'll be your vessel, even if it costs me my life, right? And he's like, hey, but then I'd never be able to see your face if I die, but hey, I'm sure you'll pretty much, like, help me out here, right? As the whole idea is like, hey, you saved me that day, so I want to save you. As we see here in a moment, all of this happens, this possession happens, and we see that Ko wears, like, this really interesting whole idea of, like, this, like, hooded cloak here in a moment as he goes through, ends up fighting this Shinu guy, and wins here in the moment, right? Slicing this guy's head off, right? And we see that as he wakes up in the water sometime later, he's like, oh yeah, last night I let Chio possess me and we defeated that Shinu guy, right? As we see that he's got, like, this mark on his wrist, presumably from, like, the whole idea of, like, yes, he's going to have his body taken over, right? As we see that he then sees Chio's face for the first time, as we just see her pretty much two heterochromic eyes. It's the most interesting thing about it, right? And we see the two of them just hug each other, and the whole idea is like, hey, let's go, even if it's going to be difficult, we're going to be able to persevere. And that's where we end this chapter of Kagami, chapter number 1. I'm intrigued. I did like this first chapter. I understand, like, hey, it's sort of one of these battle action shonen, but I really hope that while some series like this survives, I really hope that we do get a sports manga out of this batch, just for the fact of, like, yeah, that'd be pretty awesome if we could. But yeah, this was the first chapter of Kagami. Was good, and I'll be definitely interested to see where it goes from here. Kagami, I did enjoy it. Well, now we're finally to the halfway point of the video, where we sit down and talk about Embers, chapter number 20. Of course, the final chapter of Embers. Also titled Embers, right? But we see the whole idea is Haitani goes through and ends up winning the game for Kosei here in a moment, beating Kurobayashi, right? And we see all of the team is just so happy about all of this. They ended up winning at the end of the day. And they're like, hey, Haitani, you did a great job. Haitani is actually nowhere to be found. As we see that he's over talking with Oshimi-sensei, as the whole idea is the two of them want to have one more soccer match, right? And Oshimi's like, hey, I don't think I'll be, like, hardly of an opponent for you anymore. And he just sort of goes through and ends up just, like, passing the ball behind Haitani. And the two of them are just, like, playing back and forth, doing their typical thing. And we see that Yukizuki eventually comes up and sees this here in the moment, right? As eventually, yeah, Haitani's just going through all of this. He's kicking the ball and it's like, hey, this is where I want to be, pretty much, right? And as he sort of goes through, we get some narration pretty much about, like, hey, this is the real you, Haitani. The passionately competitive type, always going all out. Burning hotter than anyone, and you scorch any of the people that you touch. And here's the thing, you'll probably never notice it yourself, but your flames have seared many people, and I'm sure they'll keep spreading, burning many, many more. And even though you won't notice, as you'll never look back, across the wasteland of ash that you leave behind, some of the ones you burned will stand back up again. Those who know powerlessness will go stronger. Those who've tasted failure will grow braver. And then they'll come back to you, mesmerized by your flames. Of course, the whole idea of Embers. And this was such a cool idea here in a moment, and it was been so cool if we got this for a series that was surviving, but alas, nothing we could really do about it now. But yeah, this was just a really awesome little moment of like, hey, mesmerized by the flames, you're going to keep burning up from the ashes, getting even stronger to fight you, this plunder Haitani. Really cool moment. I do enjoy it, right? As we see that Haitani goes through and ends up winning one of these matches about Oshimi-sensei for the first time ever, right? And all of this moment, eventually we see that Oshimi-sensei just says like, hey, Haitani, whenever you're stealing the ball from a person, does it matter who you steal it from? Like, none of that has really any value intrinsically. To you, it does have value because you made it valuable. He's like, hey, Haitani, do you have fun playing soccer? And Haitani's like, oh yeah, I have tons. And at this point, 13 pages in, we then cut to 12 years later, where we see that Yuzunarima is having an interview in a building, pretty much, right? As we see that pretty much there's a little bit of, like, an interview stuff, like, hey, this is sounding really cliche, but, like, that loss really helped me grow as a player, and, like, the interview's like, oh, wow, so that's how you sort of became the star you are now, and he's like, well, star, I'd say I'm a little better under pressure because of it here in the moment, right? And we see they're pretty much going and talking back and forth, and, like, the reporter says, like, hey, we've actually asked another player to come in here and join you today, somebody you actually know well from your high school career, right? And the whole idea is like, oh, yes, all of us tend to believe it's going to be Haitani. no, it's actually Takami here in the moment, right? As we see the two of them just sit down and talk with each other, and as we see the two of them end up leaving their interview, they're sort of walking home, and they're really just discussing a little bit of everything here in the moment, right? The whole idea of, like, yeah, we see that Takami tried to go to the Nationals and ended up going back to the Japanese League, like, oh no, I guess he's not as good as he thought he was, right? But the whole idea is, like, apparently in the news, these two are massive rivals here. But the whole idea is eventually Nerima just says, like, hey, but in the end, I never beat him. Like, hey, I wonder what he's doing these days. Like, do you know Takami? Takami's like, no. The two of us actually fell out of touch after graduation. But wherever he is, I'm sure that he still plays soccer. As we cut over to a school of some type, as we see, there's just some kid going through and brawling in all of the classrooms, pretty much, right? And we see that he's pretty much going through, it's like, hey, you want to pick a fight with me? That's seriously all you got, pretty much doing all of that again, right? And we see this guy's name is Fushimi. And we see as we sort of go through all of this, we see eventually the teacher's room, all the teachers like, man, what are we going to do about this kid? Like, just leave him be. Like, he's just going to be suspended again, right? As all of this is happening, two of them are getting ready to fight each other. We see that somebody comes through and grabs this guy's wrist as he's getting ready to go through and punch somebody, right? As we now cut back over to the conversation between both Nerima and Takami, as Nerima's like, hey, like, what makes you say that, pretty much, is Takami just is like, hey, while the two of us may be the only ones still on the field, but there's simply more ways to stay involved than just playing, right? Like, hey, so I bet in somewhere, some way. So we see that the person, of course, who went through and grabbed this brawler's wrist in the school was none other than Haitani. As pretty much he's just like, hey, I'm not taking any orders from anybody who's weaker than me. As we see Haitani just like, oh, really? Do you want to test that? And he's like, hey, if I win, no more brawling at school. Okay? And we see that, of course, the whole idea, let's have a little bit of a soccer competition here in the moment. I love this chapter of Embers. I thought this was a good way to end off the series, especially on the chapter number 20 cancellation. It, again, sucks that it happens, but at the end of the day, I hope we can see these two manga come back, and I'll be really interested to see what work they write next. I thought this was a very good chapter of Embers, and like I said, I just can't wait to see this duo come back later on, pretty much, right? Well, next up, we have Star of Beethoven, chapter number 19, of course, the second last chapter of this series. And really, we see Iso play his Moonlight Sonata here in the moment. He plays it, oh man, it's really good, everybody claps. We see that he ends up beating Claude here in a moment, and then Miss Ai Akogu comes over and just says, like, hey, I see my grandfather taught you something pretty well. I pretty much recognized you. I'm sorry for all the things I said earlier, right? And the very end of the chapter is Beethoven is also now on the stage. What are we going to do? Honestly, there really wasn't much to that chapter whatsoever. It's really just like Iso plays this piano. I like some of the visuals that we see, like all the concentric star circles in the background as Iso is playing the piano, of course, the Moonlight Sonata. Of course, going through the clear sky of the moon. It's one of these things like, man, pianists are like the most complex people ever. And I understand what the manga is going for here, but legitimately, this was just one of those fine chapters this week. Was it amazing? No, but I'll be interested to see where the end of this chapter goes, and of course, where the end of the series happens next week. So, yeah, one of those things where not really the best thing ever, but I'll be interested to see where we sort of go from here. With that, let's move on to Himatin, chapter number 47. And this chapter is, of course, all about Kanai's idol performance here in the moment. And of course, in this sort of fashion, at the beginning of this chapter is pretty much all of our characters getting ready for Kanai's idol performance here in the school festival. We see that eventually, of course, Yokumizu and, oh boy, what is Mayu? It's Hanoka's friend Mayu. End up coming together, meeting with Iamori, and we see the three of them are all getting ready to go out on stage, pretty much. We see that Mayu's also brought a lot of glow sticks for a typical idea of like, yes, it's an idol thing, pretty much, right? And we see that Iamori also has a spot very clear up on the performance, really being able to see everything going on here in the moment, right? And Kanai goes through and starts to do her idol thing. We see the full image of her, and yes, she looks like an idol here. It's how an idol is typically drawn in animated manga. I covered Oshinoko on this channel. I know, right? As you pretty much see that they call out their name, that they're the flower girls here in a moment. And they just go through and do their song pretty much. And we see it's called Inner Pocket Romance. And the entire time, they're just going through and singing it. And Iamori is just like completely infatuated here in the moment, right? And of course, in the background, we see that Yoshino is watching all of this, and she's like, oh my gosh, like, they're like a real idol group, like, they're way too cute. And the whole idea is like, man, I really wonder what Iamori thought about all of that, right? As we eventually see all of this is now over, and we see that Yokomizu, Mayu, and Iamori all come out to be like, hey, that was awesome, you did such a good job, Honoka, pretty much, right? And the whole idea is Yokomizu and Mayu very quickly leave, of course, leaving just Iamori and Kanai here to talk about all of the various things, right? But pretty much, we just come through, and we see that Iamori just says, like, hey, you were super cute out there, Honoka, like, you looked really, really good, and, like, I know you must have practiced a ton because you lost your voice one of those days a little while ago, and, like, you've gotten a lot better since you sang in the bus, and you weren't out of tune this time, pretty much, right? It's like, hey, seeing you put everything you had into that performance made you seem like a real idol, like, hey, you did absolutely great, thanks for showing me that side of you, pretty much, right? As Honoka eventually just says, like, hey, actually, I haven't really told many people this, but in middle school, I actually got scouted to be part of an idol group. It was something my mom did, and I actually just completely turned it down there in a moment. But the reason I turned it down, and also why I'm probably not going to do it right now, is because I have a crush on someone. And we get a big 1.5 page spread, like, oh my gosh, wow, this is crazy. As Iamori sees this, and in the background, we see that Yoshino has been standing around the corner the entire time. And that's where we end this chapter of Hima 10. Okay, I'll be interested to see if this really goes anywhere right now, or if the whole idea is like, oh, Yoshino's going to then come around the corner, and, like, the two of them are going to be like, oh, like, what were you just saying, Honoka? Like, oh my gosh. But I will be decently interested to see where we go next time, and yeah, I just did like this chapter. I thought it was a fine one, and seeing the whole idea of, like, oh yeah, the way that Kanai's drawn looks like an idol. It's how you do it, right? So I did enjoy Hima 10 at number 47. I thought it was just a good old time. Ultimate X Kyoshi chapter number 49 is up next. And of course, as we really could have all guessed from last chapter, we start off with the whole idea of Yuda's flashback. As we pretty much get the whole idea of, like, hey, people who are born with really high levels of preset power are known as the children of God. Okay, that's pretty good to know. I guess, like, Kyoshi's, like, the child of, like, a saint or something like that. Like, just this whole idea of, like, he must have, like, the preset power on a whole nother level. And the whole idea is we all could put two and two together. Yuda was one such child. And because of this, demons are very easily attracted to him, right? And pretty much, he went to a bunch of, like, homes, pretty much, like, going through, like, being passed around as an unwanted child, until he finally wound up in an orphanage run by the Exorcist Association at the age of 11. And there, pretty much, is where he met one of the sisters who worked there, Ryoko Kito. As we pretty much also learned, she was one of the other children of God, people with these ungodly levels of preset power. And because of that, she sort of really goes through and understands the plight that Yuda had to go through as a child, right? As the whole idea is Yuda eventually learns this and tries to get closer with everybody else. We see that, of course, this sister, Miss Kito, really knew what she was doing. She was always going through and helping out everybody in the town, right? Healing them up, doing all of these various things, right? And eventually, Yuda just, like, asked, like, hey, sister, after being hurt by, like, so many people, how can you still be so nice to them, right? And we see that Kito just is like, hey, there's really nothing, like, too special to it. I just want to save anybody who can be saved, that's all. And they say, of course, the true believers will be saved. And this world isn't just filled with bad people and suffering. This world is wonderful, and I want to believe that. And I'm sure today will come when you will think so too, Yuda. And of course, this made Yuda want to follow in his sister's footsteps. He pretty much goes through and decides on his future path, and 8 years later, he decides to join the Knights of Light, the Concordia, and working as part of the unit, pretty much, right? And of course, this is when Sasaki worked back there, and some of the other higher-ups were like, hey, what are you talking about? Like, all of, like, can some orphan really be part of the Knights of Light? Like, we're from prestigious families. And Sasaki's like, hey, last time I checked, I wasn't, so I'll pretty much take you in, young guy. And we see, like, hey, the two of them end up working together until, of course, one day, the sister ends up killed. As we see that he just sees all the death and destruction, and this is the one thing to pretty much put him over the edge. As he pretty much, like, puts two together, like, hey, humans are trash, like, they're not worth protecting at all, right? As we see that he suddenly disappears and also pretty much presumably takes away the sister's murder here in the same moment. And Yuda never came back after that point. And, of course, in the moment, Sasaki's like, hey, it's over, Yuta, come home, come back to all those. Like, the sister wouldn't have wanted this either, right? And Yuta's like, hey, come home. Like, the whole reason I can't do that is because she is gone. Like, what do you expect from me, pretty much, right? As we see, this just doesn't really matter to Yuta, as he's just, like, building up, like, no, it's all because she's gone, pretty much. And his body, like, starts to explode out of all this, like, power and energy, and he becomes, like, a full-on demon guy. And now, it's Demon Yuta versus Sasaki, who has to re-roll again here in, like, 20 seconds. Oh no! What's gonna happen? And that's where we end Ultimate Exes Kyoshi, chapter number 49. I did enjoy it, and I'll be interested to see where this fight between Sasaki and Yuta goes next time, especially after we know what Yuta's whole deal is. Well, with Ultimate Exes Kyoshi out of the way, that leaves us with 4 more series to talk about. Of course, starting off with Akane Banashi, chapter number 163. And the beginning of this chapter I find to be one of the funniest moments in Jump this week, as you of course see Zenmai Arakawa is pretty much standing here getting ready for the final round of the Zunin Prize, and we see that, like, he's just got this headband on that says, I am Protag, as we just see that he's like, hey, it's finally here, it's time, pretty much, and it's honestly a really funny thing. It seems it's, like, overreacting so hard. As you, of course, see our other few press members here, I really need to learn what our reporter's name is. Like, so sometimes I feel like I get it, and other times I just absolutely forget, right? But of course, the whole idea is it is time for the first round of the Zunin Prize, and really all of the stars who are here, of course, our Rakugoka, are looking straight at home. And we see that Hikaru's getting interviewed, and we see that one of these interview questions is like, hey, it's a bold question, but who is the rival you're most wary of in this event? And the whole idea is, of course, you want it to be Akane, but because of how Akane's performance was yesterday, we see that Hikaru ends up going into the whole idea of Karashi is going to be her biggest rival right now, right? And we also see that here in the moment, Hane, who is Karashi's, like, helper, pretty much, it's just like, hey, you see that girl over there, it's like, she's declaring war on you, pretty much, right? And I love how Karashi's like, hey, the smaller the dog, the louder the bark, like, I'm gonna get her beat down on her for sure, like, it's really no big idea there, right? As the whole idea is, eventually she says, like, hey, I'm glad you haven't gotten bored of all of this quite yet, right? Like, you always used to get bored of things after you wanted them once, pretty much, right? And we see that here in a moment, Karashi's like, hey, well, a boss battle isn't over after you win the first time. And we see that Hane's like, wow, like, somebody Karashi would admit was, like, a boss against him. Like, wow, I absolutely don't believe it. Like, I guess he's referring to Akane, right? And she then like, oh, wait a second, like, speaking of which, I haven't seen Akane around. Like, what in the world's going on, right? As we now see that it's time for everybody to check in. As we see, of course, the big head judge, Shomei Tsubayakiya, heads into the room. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, like, good morning, sir. And, like, the entire atmosphere of the room suddenly changes into, like, the intense moment of, like, yeah, Shomei's here. He's a big deal, pretty much, right? As the whole idea is, we see the 5 Rakugoka who are going to be going in, pretty much doing stuff in the Zunin Prize. Of course, missing Akane. As we see that he's just like, oh, look at that, it's time, like, please remove our absent contestant from the schedule. And the whole is like, hey, but I don't think we should, like, it's Akane Arakawa. But it's like, hey, if somebody can't show up on time, we're not going to reward them, and that is my principle, pretty much, right? It's like, hey, here again, I'm to be your judge today, and he's pretty much just going through all of this and being like, hey, she's not going to show up, so it sort of is what it is. And both Akane or not Akane, Karashi and Hikaru have something to say about this. It's like, hey, wait a second, right? As we then see that somebody else, of course, Tyson, comes up from the back room. Just it's like, hey, or my bad, like, she's been here the whole time, like Akane Arakawa, like, the agency decided to put her in a different room to get some rest and all of that various stuff, right? And like, hey, we're so sorry about that, like, our bad, we're so sorry, right? As we then see that Akane enters the room, and she's really drawn in that, like, Rakugo story style, and honestly the style that we see Isho Arakawa drawn in a lot. As we just see that Kai's like, oh, it's been a while, Master Shomei, and we see that, like, her breath is cold, she's like breathing a whole lot. Like, you can see the smoke coming off her face. She's drawn in this, like, really grim, dark art style. And she's like, at last I've done it. I've become only Rakugo. And we see, like, she's really tired, and, like, she's probably, like, running a fever or something. Like, her face is all, like, blushed and flushed in here in the moment, right? And we just see that Karashi sees this, like, oh my gosh, look at that, right? As we see, it's like, oh, look at that crazy punk right there. As we just see that both Karashi and Akara are like, look at that. She is going for the win, right? As we see Shomen's like, hey, that was hasty of me, like, I'm so sorry, like, take back my scheduling demand from earlier. I do remember that I made a promise with you. I will determine whether or not you are worthy to receive God of Death. And Akara's like, hey, sounds good. And that's where we end this chapter of Akane Banashi with one of the best entrances we have gotten in manga in a very long time, as Akane just enters this room. Really, really good chapter of Akane Banashi. Well, Blue Box chapter number 200, the big 200 is up next. And of course, we have a color page celebrating this big milestone of the series. We see that it's both Taiki and Shinatsu sitting next to each other, and all of our other characters in, like, their small chibi version sitting on these two's lap, pretty much, right? Really, it's a pretty nice color page, but, like, not one of the best ones I've ever seen in sort of any stretch of the imagination, right? Well, the whole idea of this chapter is, hey, look, the Kyoto field trip is starting. We get a little bit of a focus on one of these badminton members on the badminton team, and we pretty much see that, like, he really just wants a girlfriend to be able to go out and hang out with on the second day of the Kyoto field trip, when, like, they pretty much have all day to do whatever they want to with each other, right? And the whole idea is, oh my gosh, look at this. They go over, see all of the various sites. They see the 5-storied Patagonia building, the Sanjijusan Gendo Temple. They look over, oh wow, it's the Heian Era Shrine Grand Torii Gate, right? Going through, seeing all of the sites here in the moment, right? Well, okay, eventually we see that some of these people want some pictures, so all the badminton team gets in a picture with each other, and they have Ayame take it for them. And then look at that, they have a few of the other gym members, like Ayame, get in, and we see that Hina and Nina also are all in this picture, while they take another one. And as this happens, we see that Ayame sort of just, like, runs away very easily, and, like, oh man, like, I've been told, like, I shouldn't be, like, hanging out with all these people just as much, right? And we also see eventually they hop on a bus, and Taiki ends up taking a picture of one of the Lawson's gas stations, or, like, just, like, convenience stores here in the area, right? And we see that Taiki goes over and sends it to Chinatsu. And almost a good portion of the rest of this chapter is just Chinatsu and Taiki texting with each other. They get, like, a phone video call, pretty much, right? And they just talk about all of this stuff, as Taiki just envisions all the things like, hey, if they were together hanging out, all of the various things that they could have done with each other, right? And honestly, it's a really nice moment, right? But of course, that's not where we end the chapters. We see the very ending is Ayame is walking through the halls and ends up running into Tasasago, right? And we see the two of them are sort of just, like, talking, and like, oh, did you have a good day? All of that various stuff, right? And Ayame just is like, hey, Shud, like, if there's anything that you want me to change, don't hesitate to tell me, like, whatsoever, right? He's like, hey, I know I tend to be pretty oblivious, but I don't want this to, like, stop anything or create a rift. As Tasasago just says, like, hey, I'm happy to hear you say that, but here's the thing. I just want to request one thing. Tomorrow, I want to go walking around, just the two of us. And of course, Ayame has already made some other plans. And that's where we end this chapter, the 200th chapter of Blue Box. I'm intrigued, but not really anything too much to say about this chapter. Well, next up is the 208th chapter of the Elusive Samurai, as really the beginning of this chapter is very simple, as we just see, like, oh man, Tokiyuki is pardoning some of the members of the Nakasendai War and all of that various stuff, and oh, the Hojo campaign, we lost no casualties, like, oh my gosh, it's so big and awesome. We also see what is sort of going on with Ashikaga Takayuji, and of course Tadayoshi. Tadayoshi, after the whole thing last chapter, sort of ended up still being important in history, but, like, sort of went and fell back under his brother once again. And we also see that Takayuji's eldest son, Ashikaga Yoshikira, is also sort of now under Tadayoshi, and the two of them are sort of working together. And oh no, Tadayoshi thought if he destroyed Morinau that it would establish his ideal rule, but of course, as we see, that didn't work out too well, right? But that's really the first part of this chapter, and the rest of the chapter is really where the good parts of this chapter lie, in my opinion, right? As we see, the whole idea is now that Tokuyuki and the Hojo party is back in the Suwa area, we see that Yoritsugu just says like, hey, I'm sorry that you guys just got back, Tokuyuki, but I need to borrow Genba from all of your party, pretty much, right? As the whole idea is there's signs of a big enemy attack coming on, and the Ogasawara family, who lost control of Shinano to me, are back again, and they're angry, so they are getting ready to come back and invade Suwa, pretty much, right? And the whole idea is like, hey, their commander is General Sadamune's successor, Ogasawara Masanagara, pretty much, right? And we just see like, hey, Genba, I need you to pretty much come over here and raid one of these bases, pretty much, set it on fire, set all of their food ablaze, and let's win this battle, pretty much get all of this done, pretty much, right? And it's really funny because it just focuses on Genba and Natsu for the rest of the chapter, as Genba just says like, hey, Yoritsugu is really getting to be more and more like Yorishige. Like, it's honestly funny that Yorishige made a very similar request when I first joined up with Tokuyuki, pretty much, right? But it's like, hey, all this considered, I really hate to burn all of the food they have in there. Like, I'd honestly rather steal it for the Hojo clan in general, right? Well, as Natsu is pretty much looking around and paying attention, she recognizes that there's somebody hiding in one of the bushes, right? So you see that she jumps back, pretty much draws one of her daggers, and is like, hey, Genba, there's somebody over here spying on us, pretty much. They're like, oh yeah, I see 6 or 7 more people. And it's like, hey, go and come out, right? As we see that one of these kids is like, hey, wait a second, like, you in the Foss mask, like, are you Kusama Genba? And Genba's like, yes, I am, but, like, I haven't been here in years. And he's like, oh, wait a second, but I recognize you. You guys were the orphans from Nakayama no Sho. And he's like, oh, wow, look at that. And Genba's like, that's completely awesome. Like, I didn't know how all of you guys were doing, pretty much. It's like, and you guys have grown into fine males and females. Thanks, Genba, just being the weird guy that you typically are, right? It's like, hey, like, you guys still live around here. And the whole idea is that Myojin-sama, of course, Yoritsugu, gave them some fields up in the north, but the Ogasawara recently expanded their influence and pretty much ran us out of there, right? So now they live in the wild. Okay, we have this whole idea of they're eating nuts and berries, and there's a food share of the Osagawara camp around here. I wonder what's going to happen, right? As I love how Genba, like, suddenly produces just, like, a bunch of fox ears, and goes over and sticks it on all of these characters' heads, just being like, hey, you guys are going to help us pretty much raid all the Ogasawara shrine, so at this moment, we are the Fox Spirit Bandits, pretty much, right? As we see, they're now overlooking the supply base of the Ogasawara army, looking down, seeing all of this, and it's time for the big general raid, right? And at the beginning part of this raid, we see that one of these kids asks about how Fubuki is doing, and of course, Genba just says, like, yeah, he's dead. It's how the world works, pretty much, right? And we see that they're getting ready to run into the hill areas. The guy's like, damn it, like, I really wanted to pay him back at some point, right? But now, we see that Natsu makes a big flamed diversion in the background, and like, oh no, all the people pretty much run to deal with this big fire, as we see that Genba and all of the other Fox Spirit warriors pretty much come in here in a moment, and get ready to pretty much steal all of this food, right? But as Genba grabs a crate, we see an arrow comes through and strikes true into one of the barrels. And we see that Genba's like, oh no, this has to be Osagawara Masanaga, Sadamune's son. Like, what does he look like? Is his face like his father's, pretty much? As we turn the page, and we get the whole comedy aspect of this chapter, as yes, Ogasawara Masanaga has really, really tiny eyes. Of course, the same exact nose, the same exact mouth, but the eyes are just really, really tiny, of course, compared to Sadamune's massive, big, bulbous eyes here. As it's honestly really, really funny, and one of those great jokes that Masumi does every once in a while, right? Like, honestly, I love this chapter for the main fact of, like, yes, it's getting back to, like, the best parts of Yusei Matsui's manga career of, like, hey, I like Genba, I like chapters focusing on him, I like we're calling back all the way to the beginning of the series, Genba going through, helping raid all of these people with the work of these kids that were in literally the first arc of the series, and now we're also seeing Sadamune's son, of course, like, just a typical, like, historical nature of the series. Look at this, the whole joke is that he's got really tiny eyes compared to his father's really big eyes, right? And hey, maybe the arrows actually do strike true, as well as his father's did. And that's where we end this chapter on this whole thing of like, hey, Genba and all of his warriors now have to go through and face off against the successor of Sadamune. I really like this chapter. That was really, really awesome, and I just like seeing Genba. He's my favorite character in the series, so the more that we see of him, the happier I am. Of course, whenever he gets neglected for so much of the bigger battles, being that he's sort of like in the background controlling everything, right? A little bit more than Shizuku, because Shizuku is like just more important, just like in the end of the day, right? With that, we have one more series to talk about, of course, Witch Watch chapter number 206, and this is going to be quick, because it is a comedy chapter, and the whole idea is, oh, look at this, Nico baked some cookies and wanted to infuse her feelings into each one of the cookies. And the whole joke is everybody in the Otogi household takes one, and they all take on a differing appearance as Kara comes in and has to pretty much figure out what has happened, right? And as we'll sort of learn, instead of like Nico putting her emotions into the cookies, what she actually did is bring out the emotions of the cookies pretty much. So the whole idea, like a bad looking cookie or an ugly looking cookie turns the eater of it ugly pretty much, right? And we see the way that all of this ended up working was, oh, look at this. Nico ate one that was a really stiff cookie and pretty much turned into like one of those Buddha statues, right? We see that Bon went through and ate a really ugly one, and she becomes like a really, honestly, like ugly, but I can see people like saying like, oh yeah, really lovable dragon, right? We see that Kanji ate a really coarse cookie and becomes like a little bit of like an 8-bit low resolution image of himself, right? Miharu pretty much ate a thin cookie, really making all of his words very paper thin, but also his body is also very, like, paper thin at the same time, right? Morito ate a cookie that pretty much made him very, very intense, and to fix that, he ended up eating a light cookie later. And that is the whole end of the chapter, is all of the people try to eat the opposite cookie from, like, their big thing to try to get them back normal. But it doesn't really work, right? As we see that, like, yes, Miharu eats a thick cookie to combat the thin cookie, a coarse and a fine for Kanji, a stiff and a soft for Nico, and an ugly and a beautiful for, Bon. And of course, I didn't mention one character who is Keigo, and I just love how Kento Shinohara does this. If there's ever a character who has ever acted like Char's like more than 7 occasions from, of course, one of their other mangas, Austral in Space, it is Keigo in this chapter. Like, the whole thing is he eats the good cookie, so he just acts like a really, really nice guy, and it literally just reminds me of Char's the entire time it's pretty much going on here, right? Like, the first thing that Keigo says is, like, we see that Kanji's being, like, very, like, coarse and, like, very annoying, right? And we see that, like, Keigo's just a very nice guy about it, right? He's like, oh yeah, like, I read one of his books a long, long time ago, like, hey, Kara, you're a very, very nice person, right? And the whole thing is, like, yes, he's a very nice person, but because of this, to combat it, he had to go through and eat a very, very bad cookie, so now he's not feeling good. And that's where we end this chapter of Witch Watch. It was a funny joke chapter, I enjoyed it, but also, like, not one of the best ones we've ever had by any means. And, hey, with all that out of the way, it's all of the 15 manga series we had in Jump this week. Of course, there's more than that, but only the few I covered, which means that it's now time to come through and rank all of them from worst to best. So, going through all of this, I think the worst chapter of the week I'm going to have to give to Star of Beethoven, good old Star of Beethoven. I just wasn't really jiving with this chapter. Didn't really have that same energy like the second last chapters of Embers did, where it was like, man, that chapter was amazing, right? And I'll be interested to see how Star of Beethoven wraps itself up next time. Otter of the Flame, we're going to put right above it. Just still, yeah, it was alright. Wasn't my favorite, but definitely not strong by any means. Interested to see where it goes next time. Then we'll probably put Harukaze Mound. I hate to be a broken record, but I'll be interested to see where it goes next time, as we sort of like got that whole idea of, okay, all of these people working together, and like I said, it's going to be more intriguing if I want to keep up with this series or end up dropping it in the long run, right? Moving up to the top, what was my favorite chapter of the week? Honestly, I really liked that Elusive Samurai chapter. Kagurabachi was really good. Ichi the Witch was really good. But I think I'm going to have to give it to Akane Banashi. I really love the image of Akane walking in there and the whole idea of like, oh man, everybody is so ready for Akane to get ready to come through here, do her performance as they're proud of her being a proper rival now, and also Shome's whole thing of like, hey, we made a promise, I may as well keep it. I did like this chapter of Akane Banashi. Right under that, we'll probably put Kagurabachi. Of course, I just absolutely loved the series, and I thought it was a good chapter. We learned Inten's true realm. What could go wrong there, right? Then, as normal, we'll bump it up with an Ichi the Witch. Great into the arc. I love seeing Gokuraku and all of the residents of the Kagami country cry after Ichi just drops the hard line of, hey, Bakugami, no one will ever hug you again. It's like, it's so random, but I just absolutely love it. Good chapter of Ichi the Witch. We'll then follow it up with the Elusive Samurai. Really good chapter, and I just loved seeing Genba finally do something for once. Like, it's been a long while since we've really seen anything really going with him, especially how it's also basing it on other events we've already happened. I really, really like this, right? Then we're going to put the final chapter of Embers. I just liked how it was portrayed, and right under it, we'll put Kill Blue. And now that leaves us with One Piece, Kagami, Himaten, Excess Kyoshi, Blue Box, and Witch Watch. I think that we're going to be putting Blue Box right above Harukaze Mound in the worst, four worse than the bottom position. Not saying it was a bad chapter, but it's really one of those things where Blue Box was really good beginning of the year, and I feel like it's starting to slope as we've been delving into more characters, but really haven't gotten into anything really focusing on them yet. It's sort of been that, like, we're getting there. Trust me, we're getting there. I promise you, we're going to be getting there, and we just haven't gotten to that position yet. Blue Box, I didn't hate it, though. And then we'll probably put Witch Watch right above that. Like I mentioned, I thought it was a funny chapter, but definitely isn't going to be a comedy chapter for the ages, like some of the ones where they're playing that visual novel and the whole joke of, like, oh wow, we're not wearing pants, or any of the other, like, great comedy chapters we've gotten in Witch Watch. It was fine, not amazing, though. I think we're now going to put Hima 10 right above Witch Watch, and then probably drop a Ulti X-Row Kiyoshi right above that. We're just going to copy all this over as Kaide Gami. I think is getting the exact middle position for this week of manga. Is it? Yes, it is going to be getting it. And then I think I spelled Kaide Gami wrong, so I'm pretty sure it's Kaede Gami. Let me quickly just check that. Yes, that's how I spell it. I also realized I have it written down here. Oops. And then we'll put One Piece right in between it and Kill Blue. Well, that leaves us with the best chapter week being Kane Banashi, Kagurabachi, each of which the Elusive Samurai, Embers, Kill Blue, One Piece, Kaitagami, Excess Kyoshi, Himaten, Witch Watcher, Blue Box, Harukaze Mound, Odor of the Flame, and Star of Beethoven. And of course, who do I want my character of the week to be? Kane definitely had a great showing, but I feel like we're going to be getting her more in some upcoming weeks, and her entrance was awesome, but it was really how everybody else reacted to her entrance, which I thought was the best part of this chapter. Kagurabachi had a good character. Ichi the Witch. Ichi had a very good line in there. No one will ever hug you again. It's honestly just really, really funny. And I mean, I didn't even focus on it. Like, how's Ichi going to end up fighting with this magic? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of really big intrigue there. The Elusive Samurai. Genba is always a good option. Embers, I mean, I don't really think Haitani deserves it, but he did have a cool moment. Kill Blue. Yeah, I don't really know there. One Piece. Honestly, Himaten, Hanoka maybe, but even still, I don't really know about that. So I think with that, we're just going to go and give it to, I'm going to give it to Genba. I just like seeing how he was, and a chapter focused on Genba are ones I also enjoy, so we're going to choose Genba from the Elusive Samurai. And, yeah. Follow that out of the way. Thank you guys so very much for watching this video on Weekly Shonen Jump, issue number 30 of 2025. I know this was a long one. I have been recording at this point for an hour and 30 minutes. Granted, like 30 minutes of that is probably going to be like breaks of some kind, but either way, I talked a lot on this issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, a bit more than I normally like to, but sort of is what it is there. But if you did enjoy this video, I've talked about all the issues of Weekly Shonen Jump since like issue number 43 of 2024, if I'm not mistaken, so we're almost up to a year of continuously talking about Shonen Jump every single week, which I think is going to be pretty awesome when we eventually get there, right? But if you did enjoy the video, go check out all of those other videos. There'll be a playlist linked down in the description box of this video, along with the end card of this video, and hey, this series is also up on podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the other ones that are out there. If it's not on the podcasting platform of choice, let me know, and I'll try to figure out how to get it on there, pretty much. But yeah, fall out of the way, just thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time for Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 31 of 2025. And now we'll catch you guys then, hopefully, with not 15 series, even though we've lost Embers. We are going to have Star of Beethoven, or we're going to have One Piece probably. Star of Beethoven will be ending, but we'll have the new series, Bro, starting then, so it's like, there's just a mess of all of these series going on. We'll probably have like 15, if not 16, if Rory Dragon comes back next week. I will be very upset if that happens, but yeah, what am I going to do? We just got some good manga, but yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. Glowplasma 231, signing out.